All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 12 o'clock, and I will call to order the City of Denison's Historic Preservation Board meeting. I see we just have a quorum, and the first order of business is to, I don't think there's any public comments, are there? No. Then, as the former vice chair, I will turn it over to Karen to take care of item 1A, which is hold discussion, take action, and selection of a chair and vice chair for the next year. And it's just from the people up here, or from?
Well, you will also include Ms. Bourne if you
As
so
a,
choose.
right.
Okay, but the public doesn't vote?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Just the board.
So if I were to nominate Linda Anderson, who's had tremendous experience in being the chair before?
Second.
You just do that to keep me quiet.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Nominations for chair at this time are closed. All in favor of Linda Anderson as chair of the board, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. Ms. Anderson, congratulations.
Oh, gosh, thank you so much.
Chair of the board. Would you like to conduct the nominations for the vice chair?
I would indeed. Thank you, Miss Avery. Miss Avery, I'd like to recommend as Vice Chair Kirk Jakowski, considering his experience and education.
Do we have a second?
Second.
You're really busy for your first
All
time.
in favor of Kurt Chakowski as vice chair of the board, please raise your hand.
I'm voting present.
Oh, I was voting present for myself, too. I'd never want to self-promote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall I move to this seat of great honor?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Oh, gosh, thank you. I just broke it when I was in there. Ms. Tate, will you present the first agenda item?
Sure, we'll just note that there are no public comments for item 2.
There are no public comments. Thank you for reminding me.
Items for individual consideration. The first item is to receive a report, hold a discussion, and take action on approving the minutes from November 5th, 2024's meeting.
I wasn't here, so I can't.
I move approval of those minutes.
I wasn't there. I wasn't either. I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Item 3B, receive a report, hold a discussion, and take action on a request to rehabilitate the exterior of the structure. That is not correct. The slide is not correct. It's to take action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for infill construction at 317 West Main Street, case number 2025-003H. This is the request for the infill construction. This is right across the street. We have City Hall's new building, or the city's new building, then a lot in between, and then this proposed two-story structure will be right next to Premier Baby Imaging. In this application, the applicant noted similarities to the building on the right of your screen. That's 614 West Main Street. That's the Mar building from 2019. The finish for the proposed facade is to be stucco similar to this. And you will note that this 614 appears to be taller than the two-story structure at 317. However, it's difficult for me to make that determination. The proposed facade will be finished in stucco and has black finishes and accents, including the balcony railings. The facade is set back 7 feet from the public right-of-way, which is the sidewalk, so you can see it's recessed a little bit. That is similar to Mr. Day's other building at 226. However, that one is set back significantly further. The entrance ways are also recessed a little bit, and so that's consistent with the balcony above as well. The lighting for both is recessed underneath the balconies as well as the entryways, and then the gooseneck lighting is positioned on the columns. I don't know if that's the exact lighting fixture that you are proposing, but that should be the anticipated placement. I have a feeling that they're going to change, but this is just the rendering, so there may be something that has to come back before all of you. For this application, there was a sculpture that was noted. That is not part of this approval process, but that is what the setback is to accommodate. Similar to Selfie Girl, there would be a different sculpture in that recessed courtyard area. The Denison Historic District guidelines do address infill within the district. 3.05 states that new construction should defer to the surrounding context and specifically addresses setbacks, massing, and scale, stating that setbacks should be compatible with applicable ordinances. Neither the zoning ordinance nor the historic preservation ordinance state that a setback is prohibited, thus meaning that it is permitted. Additionally, 3.05.2 reads that the design and materials of new construction should complement the design and materials of the historic district, and specifically the adjacent buildings. These are images of the adjacent buildings. To the top left image, that the green indicates where the new city building will be. Then there would be a empty vacant lot for the Holly building, and then Mr. Day's lot, which would be adjacent to the Premier Baby Imaging, which is that first building on the bottom right-hand photo. So the colors complement each other, and while there is brick on that Premier Baby Imaging facade, the other finish is stucco-like in color and material. This is the proposed renderings for those other buildings that were shared with the public back in September when we did the groundbreaking for the city building. So on the left was the city building. The middle is what has been proposed, though that has not come through to this board or to the city in any way for the Holly building. And then down below on that third column is Mr. Day's proposed facade, and up above is a comparison of 614 for imaging purposes. With that, staff does recommend approval, being that there are no ordinances or anything that would prohibit approval. And with that, I am here for any questions. Mr. Day is also present.
Sir, did you want to make a presentation?
My name is Don Day, 110 East Louisiana Street, Mechanic, Texas, and I'll be happy to answer your question.
Is there anything that's keeping you from providing architectural appearances like what's next door or to some of these other elevations that we're seeing with a lot more detail, a lot more, it looks kind of plain to me out there compared to the other structures that we have that are nearby or adjacent. So
I'm sorry, but I'm having trouble hearing you. I think you were talking about the architecture that was, I'm not sure what architecture is shown up there. On the right-hand side is the building we're proposing. Right above it is the building it's similar to. Those other buildings, I'm not sure what they are.
Could you go just to the building of the picture of just his building? Mm-hmm. I think what Mike's question, Mr. Zapata's question is what drove you to the design, your design, which is on the left, versus the 614 that you, I believe, meant to reference in your letter of intent?
Well, part of it was the architect that I used, Charlie Schurer. That's what he designed. It comes from several things. Number one, I liked the building at 614, and I thought it's a beautiful building. So I told him I wanted something similar like that. Because we have apartments up above, he wanted to recess the patio in front, and that's what you see up there. And then he recessed the ground floor underneath the awning level to provide more. When you provide more articulation to the front of the building, it adds interest, it adds beauty. And then I asked him to recess the building to 7 feet, so we would have a place to place a work of art, a sculpture. I had also told him I was looking for a Norman Rockwell-esque piece. He is currently working on a model for a child about 10 years old with a small dog. I haven't seen the model. I will be bringing it before you before we do anything on it. But the architecture of the building really is a function of what the architect interpreted what I told him I was looking for.
Okay, if I could, John, do we have one of those background books for him that has all of the,
I can get one ready for you.
okay. How familiar are you with the historic preservation ordinance and the design guidelines? And
Yeah, I mean, we own a building here in downtown, so.
So you through that?
Yeah, we've gone through the process of.
If you don't mind, I'm going to review a little bit, and I apologize, Mr. Day. We did this when we were talking about 501. City Ordinance 5330 is the one in September of 2023 that sets up the new Chapter 30. And in the new Chapter 30, it says that any of the historic preservation work done on the exterior needs to be in concert with the design guidelines.
Right.
So now on the design guidelines, what I would like to do is sit there and talk about, and it goes directly to your question there, Mike, that you were talking about. Section 301 talks about our period of significance is 1875 to 1930. This is a bit more of a brutalist style, I think, which I would submit is probably outside of that. So then it goes in there and it talks about 1.02 of the ordinance, where it talks about we seek to reinforce and enhance the economic viability of our historic downtown while promoting the small town character. It's a guide to rehabilitation of the downtown. We want to maintain the unique qualities of the downtown historic district. And then, if we go to the defining characteristics, it gives you a depiction of the building, which is very, very much like the ones we have on that next slide, which shows you the buildings on either side. If you go to the next slide there, with the arch windows, the windows on the second floor being bigger than the ones on the first floor, bulkheads if you're on the ground floor and it's a storefront, with cornices at the top, transom windows above the first floor, those kinds of things. It talks about that as the general character. What is interesting or perplexing to me is in the Roslyn assessment, which is what we have used, that they sit there and tell us how well we're doing. In 2013, we had 129 buildings, that 51 of them were contributing, in other words, enhancing the historic district. In 2017, these three buildings, 317, 319, 321, were non-contributing at that time. But in 2017, when they did the assessment, they were contributing. So of those 129 buildings in 2017, 87 were contributing. Now, I feel that the new City Hall, or the new City Visitor Center, the rendering at least appears of what's going to be in 321 will be of the same ilk. My issue and my question is this, now if you go back to, this does not seem to be in that same style, and I'm asking now staff, I don't think this would be contributing.
It wouldn't be contributing because it's a new construction. However, I don't think it's fair to base an assessment off of a building that we've seen a rendering for that middle lot. I have no idea
Okay.
what is coming.
We'll take the middle one out, but I'll look
Yeah.
at the ones on either side. Is this in the same kind of style that it would look to be enhancing the historic downtown?
I think that is of opinion. That's subjective.
If this was in what I'm going to call New Denison, up there in Preston Harbor, I would have no problem.
Yeah, I mean, this just appears really modern to me.
Also, we referenced that it looks like 614. In fact, it does not.
Yeah,
And nor is it compatible with that block. If it's compatible with anything, then we start talking about the Chase Building and further that way, I would have a different feeling about it if we were talking about something that was going to go in the parking lot next to the Chase Building. But one, it's a falsehood to say it looks like the Mar Building at 614. So that's my first comment. And the second is that I agree with my peers that it's really not compatible with the block or Mr. Day, your other building.
From the staff's comments, I really don't have a concern with stucco.
yeah, I don't
Same way I don't have a concern with the ephes that we talked about last one. And I really don't have too much of a problem with a 7-foot setback, although I would note the 15-foot setback. In another meeting that I was in, the owners of the building, the people who are in the building who are have their businesses there, the business owners, they are coming and asking for signs because the setback is prohibiting from doing that. And so I think 7 foot is probably a smart, and it gives you a spot to put this sculpture. So I really don't have a problem with stucco but I do have a problem with the overall design. I don't believe the overall design fits with the context or the style of our historic district from 1875 to 1930.
I would also like to comment about sort of the cart before the horse, and that is, one doesn't design a building in order to accommodate the exterior art. Rather, in my experience, it goes in the other direction. So I don't think having the ability to place a piece of art on the sidewalk there is enough to justify a setback. Now, that doesn't change my mind. It's just I don't think that should be used as a rationale for a setback ever, unless you, well, never mind. But as far as the setback itself, I can see, one, it gives light and a balcony to those upstairs loft, much beneficial. And the setback doesn't trouble me. I agree about that, but the architecture does trouble me.
So what I'm hearing is y'all would prefer brick. Is that what I'm hearing? That you don't like the architecture of the building? If it had a brick facade, would you like it?
I don't think brick necessarily would change my opinion. What I'm looking for is, like on 614, some fluted columns or some other columns, a cornice at the top, if you will, one in between the floor. I would want to look at something to make the building look like it's in our historic time period, 1875 to 1930. I'm not sure.
So it's not materials we're talking about, it's design and ornamentation, if you will, embellishments. The actual physical structure is not, I don't think, a problem, but rather how the front facade is treated. And the material being brick is not an issue for us. It's rather the ornamentation and the detail that makes it more compatible with the other historic buildings on the street, and particularly in the block.
Personally, I would prefer brick, but I could live with
If you
this
come-
as long as the architecture matched the surrounding, downtown.
Yeah, Ms. Tate is exactly right. Since the building is burned down, it's not going to be a contributing building anymore. We're now down 126 buildings, but I would certainly like it to look as if it's from that time period. Same way new windows look like the old ones.
All I can tell you is I'm going to build this building in 2025. I've never heard before that I had to match architecture much earlier. And so that catches me by surprise. If you want me to change the front of the building, we can go to the architect and give him some instructions and he can come up with something different. What's important to me is the setback, because the art is important to me. The front of the building, I have to like this one. I think it's beautiful. I will agree it doesn't look like it was built in 1875. I suspect it can be modified somewhat in that instead of stucco, we go with brick. Something along that line. If that would satisfy this committee, I'm willing to go back to the architect and tell them to turn it into a brick building.
I think that's a great idea. In the same way we worked with you for 501, specifically talking about the bulkheads and specifically talking about wood versus metal. Love to be able to work with you on that. I would ask you to go back to your architect and make it look a little more historic.
All right.
And
Well,
Mr.
I
Day,
will.
we appreciate, one, your continued investment in our community. No disagreement about that. Also, your willingness to work with us. The brick, that would be a great extravagance, and thank you. I would also like the design to be less rectilinear and stark, something a little softer. And I mean, that could just be detailing, which wouldn't really necessarily change the structure of the building.
Well, I assume y'all know Charlie Shearer. He can make it pretty much however you want.
I saw his name on the rendering, or I'm sorry, on the site plan. So I'm sure he can do that.
Well, I will ask him to, firstly, which I'm not sure he can do, but firstly, I will ask him to modify the front. I will leave it recessed, but have him do it with brick and try to make it a little bit more ornate as it might have been earlier.
Yeah, if we don't have, Mary, could you make sure that he's got a copy of that design guide, especially that
Yep, they know.
picture on 301 that gives you a really good depiction of, you don't have to have all of those things. We're not saying that, but is 614 your building? Did you do 614?
No, I
No.
did not.
Okay. Something, I mean, you referenced that, that's kind of like what we're looking for. I'm not wild about the grill work, but that's totally beside the point.
I do want to clarify. So initially you said you did not have an issue with the stucco. So, and then Mr. Day said he was going to go back and look at brick. So I just wanted to be clear what you're asking of him.
I want to be working with him. Historically, brick, just like 501 and some of the other buildings, is what was used. I could accept stucco like 614.
As could I, Mr. Day.
Well, the stucco wasn't selected for any other reason other than it looked like the 614 building. There was not a, stucco is probably slightly less expensive than brick, but it's not enough to make much difference.
Okay. Then in that case, I'd vote for brick.
As long as the building
Yeah, I would personally
location,
prefer
the
brick.
building configuration is okay, changing the front, for me, it's not hard.
Okay. Then I would request you change the front, and I would prefer brick. If you don't have any druthers, I think brick would, especially right in there with those three buildings.
It would be brick. I mean, that's not a problem. I can change the facade to a brick facade. It will still look similar to that. The detailing at the top, the crown, the various details will change somewhat.
Some columns, some piasters, some cornices, some kind of the embellishments that that time period had.
Yeah, it just doesn't look like it meets the character of our downtown in that elevation there, so.
No, it reminded me of the brutalist style. If it was made out of concrete, I'd say it was a perfect example of it.
Yeah.
But again, if it was up there in New Denison, up there by Preston Harbor, I'd have no problems with it. I just have a problem with it here in our historic district.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the setbacks either with like that.
Yeah.
That's not a huge problem
Especially
for
if
me.
the facade is
Yeah.
softened and the material is compatible, then it does give us a space on the street that's almost like a little pocket park. And of course, that's a welcome sight. And we appreciate your willingness to, at the same time, provide art for the city. So would then my peers think that an appropriate motion would be to table until such time as Mr. Shear and Mr. Day want to come back to us?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Rather than deny it, just make it a table?
Table is good, right?
Okay.
And of course, that's appropriate from your end, Mr. Day, yes, to table instead of deny?
Yeah, that
Yes.
would be fine.
If you want to work with you. Now, the
We
only
want
other-
that building.
Yeah,
Now, the only other thing that I will just caution the board, very much like lights on the top of buildings, we are opening Pandora's box to setbacks, which by the design guide are not appropriate. I don't have a problem with that.
I
Just
understand.
realize that that's what
I
we're doing.
understand. And what we might be talking about in that regard is, in fact, the guidance that people get at the front end here in this building when they come to propose a structure, particularly one that's brand new. And so that is something that in-house we could make it so that, Mr. Day, you didn't go this far in time and finance and ideas to come and say, oh, sorry, we can't do a setback.
There is nothing that prohibits us from doing that.
That
That's
is
what
correct.
has to be clear. Design guidelines are simply guidelines. They are not a standard or law.
Yeah, with the exception that
guidance is
the
a
ordinance says
guideline.
should be used,
Pardon me?
other than the ordinance says it should be used.
Right, but they're still guidelines.
Yes, admittedly so.
And
Yes.
guidance and guidelines have the same root, which is
That's
basically
correct.
what I'm talking about. I'm sorry,
No,
you
no,
know,
good job.
it's true.
So here's the bottom line then. What we're going to do there, Mr. Day, and I just want to make sure before we officially do it, is we're going to table this request for a certificate of appropriateness, and then ask you to come back with a redesign that's more in line with the historical time period, saying that, and make it brick, recommend that you make it brick, and then the setback is okay.
yeah. Then we'll handle it right now.
Okay,
Is that in form of a motion?
not yet, not till you close the discussion.
Oh, do my peers or staff have anything else to add? Or Mr. Day, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I'm sorry?
Would you like to
Add
add
anything
anything?
else?
Are you prepared for
No,
us
I
to?
thought what you said before, well, as long as I get my setback, I'll make it work.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
I move that we table the request for the certificate of appropriateness for the infill construction on 317 West Main Street until a redesign of the front, preserving the setback, is brought before this board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Day.
Are there any other staff updates?
We have a few staff updates. There have been several administrative approvals for signs and then one for maintenance painting along transom windows at Monarch Butterfly before they moved into that location. Also, it's been indicated that we received the Certified Local Government grant it would be a historic resources survey looking at expanding the downtown area as well as some local residential historic districts. They did not get an overwhelming amount of applications this year, so they expect that all will be funded, but we haven't received our actual letter yet. So
Great, thank you.
that's good news,
Thank you.
and that's all.
That is good news. Anything else from my peers? I will adjourn the meeting at 12:29.
I so move.
Second.
I thought Karen told us we didn't have to have
Okay, good.
See, I was trying to